achieving resilience in the work from home environment, and we will have we have the Mazars UK team with us. So let me do the introductions. So we have Bordbar and we have James Smalley. So Faye, please let's start with you. Please talk about yourself.
Yeah, thanks Maria. My name's Faye Bordbar. I've been at Mazars since 2018 after returning from some travelling and working away in New Zealand. My background is in financial analytics and process improvement, but recently I joined the operations team for accounting and outsourcing at Mazars. We're looking at implementing efficiencies to help us best serve our clients' needs.
Yeah, thank you. And James, you?
Hi, and I'm James Smalley. I've been with Mazars for just over 21 years, so I've experienced everything from my first set of accounts, which was on A3 paper ledger, all the way through to sort of modern digital accounting. So hopefully I can share some of my experience with you today on that. So I've worked with lots of clients through my time. Some of those clients we use on a daily basis at the moment, and I remember using those sort of when I was when they first came to the UK market. So it's some interesting times, but hopefully I could share some good experience with you.
Yeah, that's very exciting, and thank you very much for joining. So let's take a look at the agenda and talk a little bit more about logistics. So we will be recording this session, and we will be sharing this recording later with you. And we do very much encourage you to ask questions as we speak. So there will be a dedicated Q&A session. And whenever you have a question, just raise your hand. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the menu. So we will be very happy to answer a question. So let's take a look at the agenda. We will be talking about trends shaping new demands in accounting, and that is everything starting from the need for proactive spend control and the ability to do multiple various forecasting, cash flow forecasting, depending on the reopening scenarios. We will also touch upon technology solutions that extend Xero, specifically for Xero, that help streamline spend management and also improve data quality and process automation. And finally, we will be looking at some product insights, product details, and capabilities of bill automation that help specifically help for work with clients in the work from home environment. So moving on, trends shaping new demands in accounting, and as we know, as we have seen, so there has been effect on pretty much all kinds of businesses recently to varying degrees, and there is abrupt change in how people work and how businesses operate, and there has been a significant scale down in operations for various businesses. So I guess my first question is to you, James. So what have you seen at Mazars? So how have you perceived this change, and what's actually happening to you right now?
Well, I suppose it fits into sort of two phases. So I suppose initially when the sort of first it hit, it was very much around just making sure things were operating as normal and making sure that the bills got paid and invoices were approved. But then as things are sort of developed and businesses are sort of looking to sort of how they're sort of surviving, there's a sort of big shift from the sort of the general management accounts, which are delivered on a regular basis, through to thinking more about forecasting, cash flows, how is the business going to succeed, how is it going to survive, and running through sort of lots of different scenarios. But sort of underlying all of that is making sure that the data is there and they can still collect that data from different sites or different places. So we went through a phase of sort of a lot of our clients were already in the cloud and sort of already sort of had sort of scanned invoices, but there's one or two which are sort of, you still got some paper invoices which get delivered to premises, and it's sort of just working through some of those changes and pushing it into a digital environment. But again, it's very much with those sort of increased amount of forecasts around just getting that increased cost control and being able to manage what payments need to go out of the business and making sure that that's managed in an appropriate and an effective way.
Yeah, speaking of resilience, sorry if I'm interrupting. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say it's also just puts into the forefront, sort of like, yeah, as you say, how resilient a finance function is, and whether it sort of can cope in a remote environment.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. So speaking of resilience, there's the way we see it, a way to generalize about it is that, and especially coming from the IT perspective or from the architectural perspective, there are a number of cornerstones to resilience, and those are around avoiding breaking points in your processes and ensuring high availability of your systems and our data. Also, ability to have ability to scale down and scale up whenever needed. So it's around flexibility, and also to be able to carry out fault tolerant and cost cautious operations both internally and for your clients. So how do you see this resilience with respect to finance and internally?
Well, I suppose just in the context of the current environment that we're in at the moment, one of the things we've always looked at sort of is resilience, and it's very much around resilience around our IT infrastructures, as you mentioned, and the servers, and making sure that the IT operations are working. One thing which has probably never really been focused on as much, I think it depends on how detailed the resilience testing has gone, but it's very much how do you work when you can't actually sit next to someone? How do you work when you can't hand a piece of paper to someone? So one thing we've seen is actually it shines, the current environment very much shines a light on the resilience of those processes where the software might have been bought or utilized. So with people's with Outlook or the Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams, they're very much software which has been bought, but it's not necessarily been used. And what we see from a sort of within an invoicing environment and making sure that those invoices have gone through the right process is that where those processes have been manual, it's like they might have received the invoice digitally, it might have gone into the finance function digitally, but then someone's decided actually the process is we're going to print it off and we're going to take it to the managing director to sign. When in fact, actually, if you can push that into a proper approval flow, actually it can go and pick up all the signatures where they are. And because if you don't have that sort of systematized process in place, the resilience of the finance function starts to sort of, it weakens, because if that person is, say they were ill or they caught the virus and they weren't able to access the software it's difficult to delegate. If you've got to print off documents or pick up paper invoices from an office or a retail establishment, again, you don't have access to all the information, and you can't sort of manage the processes, and you're also losing a lot of the checks and controls which are in as part of that process. So I've seen instances where we've had sort of members of the team running up and down 6 flights of stairs in a building, picking up signatures from different people prior to sort of getting sort of appropriate software in place. So it's it's around making sure that the system works in all situations, and where it does need to be changed, someone can step into that process easily. So they don't need a huge amount of training to actually be able to move a document through to the next stage. It's very much around their knowledge and making sure it's a proper check, rather than spending a lot of time learning a system. So it's around, that's how to sort of, it's building that resilience and making sure that a process works and it's easy enough that people within that system can pick up the steps that they need to step into easily to review and to agree and to move an item through that process, whether it's to approve it or to reject it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. It's a great generalization. So should we speak a little bit more in detail about resilience in the finance function, and also the way we have been looking at it is, and what we have heard from multiple interviews and basically from the industry is that, so key concepts are having the process on the surface, and that is having the process well defined, because you cannot scale it unless you really see it, unless you understand what the handovers and all the details. So absolutely cloud, so timely data enrichment, and that's down to timely coding and correct coding that you put to all the finance documents, and absolutely support you bring your own device and working from home, working from all the devices that you can get. now that you're not in office, and timely financial control. So is there anything else that you would like to add to this point, James?
I think Maria, you've summarized sort of a lot of those points. So it's very much, I suppose that resilience is very much, it's a transparent process, so people understand it and they can actually step into it. Without that, is making sure that there is that full audit trail behind it, so that you can see what has happened, who's done what, when, where, and with whom, and how it's sort of been signed off. I think what I suppose there's this, with all the automation and all the sort of additional controls which can be put in, I suppose there's a corollary to the whole process, because effectively it improves the efficiency of the actual finance function, and it reduces the time that the finance function is spending on administration functions. So what we see is very much sort of that finance function moving to more of a business partnering role. And particularly at this time, that's hugely important, because there needs to be less focus on the administration. It's very much around working through those different scenarios with the business, working through how long the CGRS scheme is going to last. If it lasts till July, then this is what happens. If it lasts till October, then this is what happens. And it's being able to build those, and those take time. So part of the ability of the systems and the automation and moving the finance function into the cloud is very much around freeing up that time in the finance function to partner with the rest of the business and help develop the business and help that business succeed, survive in the current environment, and plan for what's coming next. What you also sort of move towards as well is thinking around, actually, as that resilience, as those finance functions might reduce, you can potentially get single points of failure. So it's also thinking around sort of how to partner with those who sort of understand the technology, have the best knowledge, and how they can be applied to the business and how they can be supported. So it's collaborating in a wider team context, but it's also bringing that finance function out of just doing the administration and then getting into the business, supporting the business and helping that grow and succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much, James. That was a great overview and insight. So, and I guess it's time for us to go into the next topic, and that is hands-on. And we're going to fade over to you. So please talk about actual systems, actual processes. So what you have been able to change as in terms of process optimization within your team and for your clients. So fully over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. So as just moving on from resilience, as James was talking about, where James was saying the need for having consistent processes that anyone in our team could pick up. The thing that's really driven that for us is our internal core app stack. So as a team, we've researched a lot of technology solutions, and we think that we've chosen the best ones for the variety of situations that we have. We hear a lot of businesses now saying, how do you approach which app to use? I think the important thing for us is to look at how we capture the data and digitize it in the app, or whatever solution you're looking at, how the data will be processed, and then how you can report on that. So before ApprovalMax, we found that we didn't have a solution to be able to handle multi-level approvals that many of our clients required, with different suppliers and different conditions on those approvals. And obviously we've got quite a large client base. So by choosing solutions such as ApprovalMax that's relevant across all different types of industries and clients, we've built resilience in our team by being able to respond in all sorts of scenarios, for example, during this current climate. So do you want to go on to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about how the workflow in ApprovalMax works?
Happy to.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm not sure for those on the call who's actively using ApprovalMax, or if you've not yet seen it.
I think we have, yes, yeah, both teams are there. So we also have existing users, ApprovalMax users, and we have people who never tried ApprovalMax. So yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'll just give a quick overview. So the first stage is the bill fetching, and for us, this starts at the point in the OCR scanning software that we use.
So it reads the information from the invoice, and we publish that through to Xero in what we call the awaiting approval bucket, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And you can also just raise the invoice directly in Xero as long as you save it into the awaiting approval bucket. That's the key step there. So once it's in that bucket, it gets picked up in ApprovalMax. If you've got purchase order matching, which I'll touch on a bit later, it'll do some matching there. And then you get the option for the approvers to review the coding on the bill, check that the amounts are correct, the correct department or GL code has been used. And that's where you've got the multi-step approval and authorization, depending on what workflow you've set up for that particular business. So you can do anything from a really simple approval, say one of few people to approve something, or you could say, okay, we need a technical approval, a payments approval, and a final approval. But we always suggest just start simple and build it out. And that's how we build our workflows. And that's what's really giving our clients the proactive spend control on their invoices, especially with the purchase order matching, which, as I said, I'll touch on a bit more later. But I think the clients really appreciate having it all in one place and being able to track where their invoices are at a point in time. Does that answer that question now?
Sorry, didn't.
Just said, does that answer the initial question?
Absolutely. Yes, sure. Yeah, the question, I was reading into the questions in the Q&A. Yeah, we will be responding those as later as we speak. So just to let the people with us know. So yeah, absolutely, sure. Do you want me to go ahead with the slides?
Yeah, I want to pop on to the next one.
Sure.
So as I was saying, for us, for our clients, especially as we mainly provide an outsourced finance function, it's essential for us to know that the client has approved invoices, as we might not be involved into the day-to-day operations. And using purchase orders really adds to the spend control, because a client knows that for any bill that might be on their payment run, that it's also been matched to a purchase order through a separate process. So as is kind of summarized on the slide, it prevents non-essential spend, and it can help match purchase orders back to invoices, and it can help with forecasting as well, so in advance of the spend. So if you go to the next slide, and I'll just talk through the purchase order approval process and how that workflow works in ApprovalMax.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So the start of this workflow is where the purchase order is created. So you can do that in ApprovalMax itself, or you can ask ApprovalMax to pull those through from Xero. Depending on which suits your client better, you may wish for the client to have access, or people from the client to have access to Xero, or you may not. So you may want to segregate those duties. And just as we had with the invoices, you've also got the multi-step and multi-level authorization, which is essentially a separate workflow to your invoice approval, but you could set them up to be the same. And once that's approved, it will flow back to Xero as an approved purchase order. And it means that when clients are using purchase orders, we can configure ApprovalMax to only allow approval of invoices, say within £100 of a purchase order limit. And this is really how a business that wants to prevent non-essential spend can implement some more controls in that area. So we recommend that if businesses want to follow that route, then they notify their suppliers that any orders will be placed via a purchase order, and then they can reject non-essential purchase orders at the point before the spend has actually happened. Because what we see sometimes is that businesses are only aware of the spend after it's happened and they've been invoiced for it. And actually, even if they wanted to reject that, they've already received the service.
Mm-hmm.
I just say there's one more point about using purchase order. I think it improves on the speed and accuracy in the bookkeeping system, because it's likely to highlight where invoices could have been coded to the wrong code or wrong department, or potentially if there's been any human error along the way that's put in the wrong amount, then that would probably be flagged at that point. So we find that it improves the accuracy as well if you want to use purchase orders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for that. So as a quick addition, so we also heard a couple of cases when purchase orders are actually used for cash flow forecasting. And the case is that it is industry specific, vertical specific, absolutely. So it is agricultural industry. And what's happening is that bills would be arriving a month later, and while they get approved, it's another month. And so in order to make a cash flow forecast, you have to wait like 2 months and to have it to have it accurate. And what's happening is that a company used to started using purchase orders because there's an identical match of purchase orders and the bills that would be arriving. So they started using purchase orders and automatically created an ApprovalMax. And this way they could be able to create a budget and do cash flow forecasting very much well in advance, like close near real time. So, and again, it is industry specific, and surely it's not universal that a purchase order equals a bill. So, but still, yeah, interesting things are, such cases are also out there.
But I guess also at the year end, you could look back and say which purchase orders haven't yet been filled, and do I need to accrue for any costs that are going to come in? So there's lots of varying usage of those purchase orders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to move to the next slide?
Yes, please.
Sure.
So here I think we're talking about safety features in the software and how we use ApprovalMax kind of day to day. So for us, when we had to move into remote working in the lockdown, this was set up by knowing for most of our outsourcing clients, particularly those using wholly digital solutions, we wouldn't need to be physically in the office to pick up the post, as James said, or run around chasing signatures for those. Our clients can approve or reject the invoices from their browser, from their emails, or even like directly on their phone. There's an app that I'm sure many of you on the call have seen, and they really like that because they can add a comment as to why they want to reject something. So rather than just rejecting and it never gets picked up again, we as a team can then pick up the rejected items, see the comment and rectify that so that it can get approved, or so that we can go back to the supplier and resolve the situation in another way. Another great thing about the app online is that you can give an auditor access, so they can see like a read-only view of all of the invoices in there. And we find this is particularly useful at the moment where we've got auditors that would usually come to our offices and ask us to show them things, and actually we're able to just show them online where they can find it themselves, and it takes the pressure off the accounting team. And I think it takes the pressure off, as James was saying, that single point of contact is no longer there because the information, the data is digital and it's there for everyone to see. So we found that particularly helpful in the current climate. And I think the last thing I would say, it also really helps within our team. A manager can log in online and resolve any issues that their team may be not sure where to code something, or not sure of the tax code, and you can easily log in online and see all of that in ApprovalMax, and you don't need to be physically standing next to someone to support them either.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And again, should I go on with the next one?
I think, where are we up to?
Okay, my favorite one. Yeah, so here we also will be inviting James also to comment a couple of things here for us. So yeah, working from home and client collaboration, which is a great challenge now that you cannot spend the needed time, the quality time in trying to chase the right people that you need decisions from. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's quite interesting how sort of collaboration has changed. So I don't know whether you sort of join me in a sort of nice backdrop as it is now, or whether you join me with sort of the cats, which is joining on the keyboard, or with children in the background. Working from home is a completely different experience for everyone, and it's not quite it's not quite the same as it is in the office. So and there's massive changes. So one thing we see from with our team and sort of working is that we get feedback from our clients, and very much that the clients, I'm never sure whether to take this as a compliment or not, but there was just very much, we haven't noticed any difference, and it's just like, oh, okay, that's good. Behind the scenes, there's a lot going on, but very much it's we've not seen much difference apart from lots of communication around CGRS and CBILS and all the other things to do. I think one of the biggest things we've sort of seen as sort of within the firm is actually it's around how it impacts people and how people react to the whole sort of working from home differently. And it's like keeping the team engaged, keeping them motivated, making sure there's activities to sort of like keep going with what work is going on. And it's just making sure that we're supporting the team with sort of a proper balance, and sort of encouraging people to do steps during the day, making sure people are getting some physical exercise, balancing sort of mental health. And although it's probably, and it's around sort of being able to communicate things as they evolve with the rest of the team as well. So we've gone through sort of lots of forecasting and lots of planning as a business, but it's very much around how we've shared that with the team. And it's really sort of a key part of our ethos about being transparent and sort of talking through those different steps. And it's challenging in many aspects, but in other aspects, it starts to bring the team closer together as well. But I think from a practical day-to-day basis, I think Faye can probably talk a bit more about sort of what we've done on a day-to-day basis to help with that client collaboration and just making it a bit more comfortable to work from home.
Yeah, so all of the communication that James and the exec at Mazars have been communicating to us as a team at Mazars, we've been doing that over Microsoft Teams, which, as James alluded to at the start, we may have technology there, but really when we're forced to use it, that's shown that we can use Microsoft Teams, and we've really made that transition to a point now where everyone's using it day to day. So that's been really positive. We've also all got corporate mobiles, so it doesn't restrict us by not having our landlines that we would usually have in the office. Everybody seems happy to have the latest phone, and they're able to call their clients and keep in touch with their peers as well. There's the obvious point that we all have laptops. I think it's really tricky if you've got desktop computers to be able to work remotely. So it's really good that we have laptops to be able to work from home. And recently we've been given a second screen if we apply for it. So that's made a lot of people very happy. And I think it's important to notice that small things or seemingly small things can really make a big difference in people's general engagement, happiness and well-being. And I think the second screen is one of those really positive points for everyone at Mazars.
Yeah. What about the amount of work? So the feedback I have been getting is that it's kind of work is 24/7. Previously you could be leaving office and that's it. So and now it's my friends are saying and I can fully support that it's 24/7, no longer weekends, no longer anything. It's that it's all the time. It's back to what you, James, were saying, that yeah, it's different for different organizations and modes. But in Faye, for you, how has it been?
Yeah, so I think it's very easy. If you're not careful, you can just work all the time or seemingly all the time, because there's not that much else to do at the moment. But for me, I'm lucky that I can have my desk in one of the spare rooms in the house. So for me, at 5, the computer goes off. I leave my work phone in the room, and I won't come back in the room until it's the next day. I'm also taking advantage of kind of, if I do work a few extra hours, then I might take a half day. I really enjoy horse riding, so I finish now a bit early once a week just to go horse riding. And I think it's important to remember that it's not normal, this situation that we're all in at the moment, and I think everyone just has to find their own ways of coping with it and dealing with it. And as long as you're supportive of that, I think we can all kind of learn from this situation and hopefully come out the other side.
Yeah, it's back to the you have to be very much organized. Yeah, sorry, my kids are Still penetrating. We have a very relevant question, a great question from Caroline. So in terms of bring your own device, how does ApprovalMax support this? I do not think there is two-step authentication. So bring your own device was largely about the ability to use any kind of device that you have at your disposal. It's not that you have to rely on corporate software, but you can use any phone. Suppose it's a smartphone, and you can use any laptop, and what you need is a Wi-Fi access. So that's it. So that was pretty much what was behind it. And please let me know if that's not answering the question. We will be happy to answer that. And yeah, the next one about budgeting. Yeah, I guess Konstantin, who is our director of product, he will be the best one to answer that for you later as we move on with the slide. So Faye, back to you. So do you want me to switch to the next one?
Yeah, go ahead.
My favorite also, so a client success story. We have been waiting for it. So a theory here, theory there. So please talk about a real life example. So what's happened, and we're all yours.
Yeah, of course. So I think we've already alluded to this client as we've been talking through a little bit here and there. So this is a retail client of ours. And before ApprovalMax, they had someone running up and down, like I think 6 flights of stairs. So as well as being physically exhausting, it wasn't really a long-term solution for them to keep up. And we kind of recognized that actually they needed to automate this process. They needed to make the data digital. And so we jointly worked with them and recommended ApprovalMax as a solution. And since they've implemented it, it's transformed the way that we communicate with them around invoices that are awaiting approval and awaiting payment. So their feedback's been really positive. It's very straightforward for us to set up, and I think they appreciated that we could walk them through the workflow as well and show them how it worked. It's not too difficult to understand, and they instead of obtaining the wet signatures or email approvals, it's meant that they can approve online via their emails or via the browser or via their phone. And it's meant that we can move away from spending so much time answering queries about the status of where their items are at, and we can actually help them more with the day-to-day running of the business and give them some more insightful comments, rather than, oh yes, you have 5 invoices that we're waiting for this person to run around the building and find 7 approvals for this. So it's helped transparency, it's improved communication, and the other thing was that they had a really positive audit comment about their controls over their invoice approvals, and that wouldn't have been possible before using ApprovalMax, because it was down to some human judgment to look at a signature and determine whether that was the right one. Whereas now we have an electronic process in place where if it doesn't get the right signature, it won't move to the next step in the workflow. So their audit team were really happy with that. So overall, it was a really positive user success story, and it's given them a much more kind of systematized process, as James put.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it sounded very much like you have already built the basis for the work from home environment for them. So with the systems, with the process already defined and everything taken care of and optimized, so it was a lot less pain for them. Yeah.
Yeah. It was already there for them when we went into lockdown, and it's just continued to work exactly the same. And as James said, I don't think they noticed any difference from us being in the office or working from home.
Yeah, I guess it's the greatest feedback, actually, the greatest feedback that you can get, that everything's working. And yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the final one. So resilience, so the takeaways, and we will be very quickly summarizing that. And we have already talked about moving to cloud. That's absolutely obvious, and that enables a whole lot of things that or not possible with the legacy technologies that some organizations may still have in place. And then so quality data through timely data enrichment and flexibility around processes and scaling up and down, and that's down to everything, to resources, to people that you have, to processes and everything. And so cost control, I'm very sorry. So cost control and and again, so the process of having the process on the surface so that you can very quickly make the changes that you need. So I very much invite you, James, and you, Faye, to add to the summary.
Yeah, okay. So I think the big thing we see is it's really accelerated that digital transformation, and it's really shone a light on those manual processes as part of that. So I think people are moving, or we see a lot of clients, they're very much in that moving out of a survival step. And I think there's still a bit of this, there's still sort of making sure things are going right. But what we also see in the market is huge amounts of transformation, whether that's from a digital side or just how clients will service their clients and service their businesses. So it's take that, I think it's a huge opportunity to be able to take digitally transform the finance function and move it to a sort of a cloud-based finance function, which is resilient in any environment and can work wherever it might be delivered. That's very much a good opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Faye, anything on top?
I think what I would just say is that it's not difficult to implement ApprovalMax or similar technology. You know, don't be scared by it. I think it's really helped us. Everyone that we've trained in the product has picked it up straight away, and almost all of our clients have had really positive reviews of it. And where they've said that they don't want to use it is actually where there's only one person in the business approving things, and they've already approved it by the time we receive it. So it's useful in so many situations. So I think it's really worth a look at.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I guess it's time we move on to the Q&A part, and we have a couple of questions from the audience. And I guess, Konstantin, this is where we will be very much needing you. So hi, Konstantin.
Yes, hi everyone, this is Konstantin speaking. And yes, I'm happy to comment on these questions that I see. The first one regarding bring your own device. Well, Maria actually partially answered to it as well. Let me just mention that 2FA, two-factor authorization, is not available yet. That is something that we have already designed, and this is something that is currently going through our internal estimation process. So we're just estimating how much time it will take us to implement it. But this for sure will be coming, because we are getting more and more inquiries for that, and there is some additional legislation that is making it actually mandatory in some cases. So it is going to happen for sure. It's just a matter of timeline. And yeah, I cannot commit to a particular date yet, but yeah, that is something that we are currently designing and estimating. So that was the first one regarding bring your own device. The second one, actually, I have already answered in the Q&A area. The question was about budgets, how to work with them, how to set them up. I have shared with Caroline a couple of links. One of them is to our blog post. Another one is to our knowledge base. And these are quite detailed descriptions of how it works currently. One important note to make here is that currently this budgets feature is under beta, meaning that it is not available for everyone yet. You just need to ping us at support@ApprovalMax.com. We'll switch it on for you, and it will become available. The reason actually why we're not bringing it to the GA, to the general availability, is that we need to add year-to-date budgets. That's a big action item on our end. Once we have year-to-date budgets and maybe a couple of more fixes, then we'll just make it GA, meaning available for everyone. Okay, then the next question is, in theory, it's possible to automate fully the invoice approval process. However, the biggest challenge has always been weaknesses in the underlying three-way matching process rather than technology. There are often poor or non-existent PO approval process. Also, there are differences between wording on POs, GRNs, and invoices. Often the supplier invoice has much more detail than the original order. In a typical project, what is the split of effort between fixing business process and implementing technology? That is a brilliant question, to be honest. I mean, I love it, right? Because it is actually, it's touching not just the technology part, but it is touching the business process part. It's very interesting one. So let me try to cover my part, and then actually let me give it to James and Faye, I guess, to comment maybe on their end, how they see it. So as for the technical part, well, first of all, yes, there is this difference, of course, that we see oftentimes, that the purchase order, it has oftentimes less details than the invoice. Sometimes it's the other way around, actually. Sometimes we see that the purchase order has all the proper coding, because when the purchase order is raised in a purchase order system, well, if the process works properly, of course, right? If it works properly, then GL codes and tracking categories, they will be already filled in on the purchase order originally. And when the invoice comes in, the purchase order has actually more details than the invoice. And the feature request that we're getting from time to time is that there is a need to copy coding from the purchase order to a bill, to a supplier invoice, because purchase order just knows more about this request. Right? It knows what tracking category it is linked to and what should be the GL code, right? So that is actually a more typical situation. We see that purchase order has more details. And yeah, on a high level, in ApprovalMax, there is a purchase order process. There is an ability to match purchase orders to bills. What we currently do not have. Is that matching is manual, right? We cannot do automated match of bills to purchase orders. That is something that we have in mind, and we have already some ideas. We have made the research, and the results of the research show that looks like we could be doing automated matching for a very significant percentage of bills, right? Because they are kind of almost identical to the purchase order. And this is good news. It means that it makes sense to implement this feature because we'll be saving lots and lots of time. For remaining purchase orders, for remaining bills, of course, some manual intervention will be required because they do not exactly match the PO, and then someone needs to review this, these things, right? So yeah, that was my more like technical part. One more note to make here, though. There is another step oftentimes happening where there is a need to confirm the delivery itself, right? And you're absolutely right. It is just working in different ways for different organizations. And we see that sometimes delivery confirmation, it is a part of the bill approval. For some of the organizations, it works perfectly fine. They're saying, well, when you approve a bill, you need to confirm that delivery has happened. For some other organizations, it doesn't work. They're saying, no, it should not be this way. It should be a separate thing. One thing is to approve a bill that it is correct, and a completely different thing is to confirm that the goods have been delivered. And for this case, for the latter case, I mean, when it should be a separate thing, we have actually another feature that is called attachments for comments. It is not specifically a GRN solution, to be honest, but this is a feature that provides kind of a workaround. So someone can go to a purchase order, can comment something like, yes, all the goods have been received, services have been provided, everything is looking good, and attach a file, a confirmation for this delivery, right? It's not exactly a match where you would match line item by line item, not like this, but it is a way to work around this additional matching with the delivery. Well, that's it. That's my part, technical part of this question. And yeah, let me hand it over to Faye and James. Maybe you have some business things to comment here.
Yeah, my answer is probably going to be a lot less technical. So, I think what we find from when we're implementing the technology or when we've implemented ApprovalMax is pretty quick actually to actually implement. So depending on the number of workflows and different approvals and the approval matrices which are in there. And if you're doing a split, so the split between fixing a business process and implementing the technology, the implementation of the technology is relatively quick. Defining the business process can be quite quick. Sometimes that can take a bit of time. The bit which can take a bit of time is generally a wider education piece. So it's once the system has been put in place, or before the system has gone in place, is around the team training and getting the adoption from the teams which are going to be using it. So it's very much about having a champion at the client who will sort of champion the process. And then it's thinking around sort of some of the education pieces around the suppliers and how they're sort of sending in documentation and invoices. So there is a bit more work around, I suppose there's more effort in actually the fixing of the business processes and making sure people are doing things correctly so that it feeds things. It comes back to my point around actually when you might have bought the software, but people might have been sort of circumnavigating it or not been using it properly, which can come out in certain environments. And then when you do move to it, you then start to see the sort of full benefits of it. So if you're looking at a sort of split, it's probably 20% on the implementation and 80% is on the sort of fixing of the business processes, training of the teams, and making sure that things are happening as people expect them to be.
As a very quick add-on to this, we actually had some study a couple of years ago into the implementation, into how much implementation takes part, and what we came up with was that as a rough split, the preparation is 70%, and the actual transition is like 30. So it can vary, but pretty much that's back to what you, James, are saying. So
Yeah.
the business process, figuring out what you need as the process and everything, that's 70%. And then technology, plus or minus, that's 30 and down.
Yeah, and actually, when it comes to the actual running of it with the teams, the team training of the clients is very quick, and it's very easy to use, and with the incentive that they will get their suppliers paid and things will go through the system, suppliers often buy in quite quickly, and so do the team members who need to get their sort of suppliers and contractors and close providers or whoever they might be paid. So people have got a natural buy into the system, because if they can get it to work properly and effectively, everything happens much faster and much quicker and much more accurately as well.
Mm-hmm. Konstantin, back to you.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, we have a couple of very interesting questions regarding approval of manual journals, right? And well, that's a good topic. We do have inquiries for it from time to time. And yeah, the background basically is that there are documents like bills, sales invoices, credit notes, etc. And then there are kind of direct journal entries in Jira. And the question is how we can organize an approval for the journal entries. And yeah, let me also take care of the technical part, and then maybe James and Faye have some ideas on how to handle it from the process standpoint. For the technical part, there is a roadblock actually. The problem is that there is no approval status, approval logic behind manual journals, as far as we know in Jira, right? So for bills, it is very straightforward. As you know, if you go to this bills to pay tab, you have drafts, you have awaiting approval, you have awaiting payment. So they're clearly split by the status. And that's for ApprovalMax, it's very easy how to handle that. You pick them up in awaiting approval status, you approve, and then you put them back as awaiting payment. You just change the status. For manual journals, we didn't find such a clear and transparent solution yet. If there are any ideas that you would like to share with us, we are very much open to get your feedback and your insights about how this might work. And then we'll see how it goes, right? Who knows, maybe we will add such kind of a workflow. But for now, it is not a part of our mid or short-term plans. We just don't know how to implement this properly.
Yeah. So, So I suppose we've seen it on a very few clients in this, because again, it's not a huge, it is a bit of a manual process, but there is some workflow functionality within ApprovalMax to set up workflows which are outside, away from the AP. But again, it's not automated and it doesn't link to the journals. But what we've found on where we've had to put that in place is effectively those journals are put into a draft format, they're printed off, and then they're uploaded into a workflow which then goes off for approval. But then that approval is then attached to the original journal. So it's not an ideal position, but it gives you a workaround to be able to use the ApprovalMax system to get that approval, and it saves sort of having get those printed off, and it's signed off in a different way. So there is a workaround, but it's not completely straightforward, but it can also be used for other functionality as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Konstantin, anything else that you would like to cover just now? I think we have a question about bill fetching. I think we can share documentation to Katie. What do you think?
Yeah, well, that's actually a good question, like how bills are getting into ApprovalMax. I guess there are multiple ways, like different types of data entry tools, and there is copying from PO to bill. Yeah, I think if we could share some materials with Katya, I guess. Sorry if I pronounced it wrongly. Then yeah, let's share them. And actually, quick announce, Maria, I'm not sure if you have mentioned that some updates to the website are coming, and there will be nice pages about that. How different ways can we use here?
Well, a lot of things are coming. Yeah, we are very excited, but that's things to come. So yeah. Okay, so I see that we're actually we're losing participants. Everyone, thank you very much to everyone who has been staying with us. And thank you very much to James, to you, and to Faye too. It's been exciting. It's been very insightful, and we very much appreciate your eagerness and participation. So it's been great, the whole process, and today it's been fantastic. So thank you very much. And so Konstantin, if there's nothing that you would like to add, and or James or Faye, then yeah, we're calling it a day.
No, thank you.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.